This is not a video that I'm excited to make, but I'm really worried about Pokemon Champions. And I think I've scripted this video about 3 different times, and each time new information has come out, and each time I get a little more worried. So in this video, I'm going to explain why I'm worried about it, and also it's not scripted this time because I have to go to Mexico for a regional real soon. And so I'm just going to get it out and see what your thoughts are, and maybe spark some discussion. But really, my worry started when they announced that Pokemon Champions would be released in April on the Nintendo Switch, and not on mobile, which was a big draw of this game. I mean, the mobile game market is so much bigger than the market for Nintendo Switch, and that is reflected in the size of Pokemon Pocket and Pokemon Go. Like, if you release a mobile game, a well-made mobile game for mobile players that has Pokemon in it, people will play it. But it's not being released right away. Instead, they're splitting the releases up, and that's concerning because they only have a limited budget for marketing, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get that initial hype that Pokemon Go and Pokemon Pocket did, that momentum. It's hard to do, especially when it looks like this game does not have the biggest budget. It's not the top priority. Obviously, Winds and Waves is the top priority. And so when this comes out, if we don't see a huge marketing push for mobile, it really might flop, or relative flop to what it could have been if it was a simultaneous release. I also just am really worried about who this game is made for. And that is been more and more apparent through the trailers and through the features that we've learned about. Because there are a lot of people who love competitive Pokemon, and this game is not made for. I mean, they seem to think that competitive Pokemon is just Battle Stadium. In fact, this is a Battle Stadium simulator with monetization, and I'll give them credit. The aspects of collecting Pokemon and how they monetize that are actually really well thought out. But the battling is kind of the same. It's just a Battle Stadium simulator, and that's a shame because there are so many people out there who love competitive Pokemon in many different ways, and this game is not for them. People who play in draft leagues, you probably can't do your traditional draft league in Pokemon Champions, at least not as easily. You will have to make some pretty significant adjustments to how that runs. And of course, people who like Smogon and play singles, or play even the Smogon doubles tiers that are 6v6, which doesn't seem like there is a mode for in the game. And the timer, I believe you can adjust, is what we saw, but the timer was also always been a really big factor. And so it doesn't seem like they're going to really support the formats that lots of people know and love. And of course, the biggest one that I'm going to talk about more is Random Battles, which has more games played than any other Pokemon format right now on a monthly basis. People love Random Battles, and that's something, and I'll talk about that more later. But I think that was a no-brainer inclusion that they missed out on. But, you know, one way I wanted to find out about this, I asked my friend of the channel, Freezeye, who makes primarily Smogon content, and what percentage of his viewer base had a Nintendo Switch. These are people who watch competitive Pokemon content. They would absolutely at least try out Champions. He said about 10%. He thinks about 10% of people who watch his channel own a Nintendo Switch. So you are just missing out on 90% of people who, maybe will pick up the game once it comes out on mobile. But before that, they'll have a chance to watch a bunch of content about the game, try out the format on Pokemon Showdown, and they really may decide, I would rather just keep sticking to playing singles or watching content. Like, you really only have one chance to make that first impression, and that first impression is so much better if people have the game in their hands and that excitement that it comes with. Instead, to me, it feels like they're not targeting people who already love competitive Pokemon, and instead they are targeting Pokemon fans. Like, it kind of makes sense because the Switch release is coming out first, and the people who are going to get the game on the Switch are people who already own Scarlet and Violet. So it makes sense to target Pokemon fans. But my concern is that I don't think Pokemon fans like VGC. That might sound crazy. I know Wolf is getting multiple millions of views every video, but really I think the problem is that the people who like VGC can already play VGC. Like, VGC is past the point of being an afterthought. I think it's huge now, and if you are a Pokemon fan, you have almost certainly, especially if you own the Nintendo Switch, you have almost certainly heard of VGC. You have probably seen a Wolf video or some video about, or maybe an official VGC stream, and you at some point have decided, this isn't for me. If you haven't already dived into it, maybe you have tried it already, right? But a lot of people haven't tried it and they said, not really for me. And is a battle stadium simulator with no like real new features going to attract those players? Well, the big bet that the Pokemon company seems to be making is that the problem for those players was accessibility. That now all of a sudden, if you can get competitive Pokemon in game much easier, and you can just do the sliders instead of having to EV train your Pokemon and breed for the right IVs and use bottle caps and all those different steps, then more people will come in. And surely that will be the case. Like, there are some people who have been avoiding VGC because of accessibility issues. But I think a vast majority of people just don't like VGC. Like, they don't have any interest in playing VGC. They've watched the Wolf video. They probably like watching content about VGC. And in fact, that's what Freezeye told me as well, is that there's a lot of people who just like watching VGC or Pokemon content and don't really engage with it. And this isn't going to get people to engage with it because it's not new. It's the same thing. And so I think a lot of people are going to try it out and they're going to say, this is the same. The accessibility, I also believe, just hasn't actually been the issue because of rental codes. If you wanted to go and play on Ranked Ladder, you can queue up with a rental code right now. Everyone who has Scarlet and Violet has seen the ranked battle option in game, and they have seen the rental code screen within that option. And at some point, they either decided it wasn't for them or they tried it out and decided, I'm not having fun. And so when all the trailers seem to be targeting Pokemon fans that don't know about VGC, that just seems outdated. Like, that was true when I started playing back in 2017. That's really, really not true anymore. There are other reasons why Pokemon fans don't play VGC, and I think that it's largely because they just don't have fun with it. And again, I'll say it again, random battles really might have helped with that. So anyways, instead of feeling like a reimagining of what VGC could be on mobile, or a reimagining of what competitive Pokemon means to people and how we can appeal to people who like competitive Pokemon but maybe don't currently play VGC, this feels like a direct Battle Stadium port. This is them saying, we're not going to have Battle Stadium in Winds and Waves, so we need to take that functionality and put it in a mobile app as quickly as possible and essentially like as bare bones as possible. And it does feel like the battling is just Battle Stadium, and the monetization and the how to obtain Pokemon is the part they put a lot of more thought into, and again, is I think pretty well done, all things considered. But there's other stuff that to me doesn't really make sense, and that is I said they monetize the way that you obtain Pokemon well. The aesthetics don't appeal to me. Especially the BP cost aesthetic features are based around your trainer, which makes sense in an RPG. It makes sense in the Pokemon game, in Pokemon ZA. I will go and I will dress up my guy and run around because I'm looking at his butt all game, right? That's what I'm doing, is I'm following my trainer around. So it is meaningful what my trainer looks like. They have directly ported the animation where you throw the Pokeball out and the trainer sprites and how you can edit those. Directly ported those and maybe added some extra functionality to those features that are not the point of a competitive battling simulator. You don't look at your trainer when you are battling. In fact, you basically don't notice what your trainer looks like when you are battling unless you are doing a Z-move animation or you are, something like that, maybe Mega Evolving your Pokemon with the Omni Ring. You're not going to notice your trainer. What you do notice is the Pokemon. And so for them to not really realize how an RPG and the aesthetics that you need in an RPG are different than the aesthetics that you might want to customize in a competitive battling simulator is a big red flag to me. Everyone, and I mean literally everyone, thought you would be able to purchase custom Pokemon that have like their own aesthetics, like a ribbon on them or whatever. People, and that was in Unite, right? That's a big way of how Unite monetizes, is my understanding. I don't actually play Pokemon Unite, and that's just missing. We haven't seen it. I think that we will have that eventually. I've been saying the best thing they could do is make it so you can buy cooler animations, because they've added some cool animations like Eruption and Blizzard, but a lot of the animations in these trailers look pretty plain and pretty boring. And I think that would be an easy way to monetize. It's just a missed opportunity. Again, you only get one chance to make a first impression, and I don't want to make it so spend VP on making my trainer throw underhand like I can in Scarlet and Violet. I want to spend money on making my Garchomp do a little jig when it clicks Swords Dance. That's way cooler. And that would be like very intentional design. That would be thinking about what it means to make a competitive Pokemon simulator and not just porting directly the features from an RPG. I also am worried about the actual features in the game, at least for the battling part of it. Like, they're missing replays. They said there would be no replays, although there is a spectator mode, so thank you for that. That is really big, and I know that was half implemented in Scarlet and Violet. We have it for the World Championships. It's caused problems at the World Championships, so hopefully this is implemented better than the spectator mode in Scarlet and Violet, but it should be. But there's no replays, which is a functionality that we did used to have. It wouldn't take up that much space, and I think is super, super important for any competitive game, because that's the way you get better. You can't practice without analyzing your own replays. If you expect to get good at the game, how else do you expect to improve? You can't just jam a bunch of games and think, well, that's going to do it, right? You have to have very intentional practice, and that includes watching your replays. If you are preparing for a tournament, every single pro player nowadays uses spreadsheets that they save their replays from Pokemon Showdown on and analyze those replays to see what are my team's deficiencies, what have I not played against that I still need to practice against, questions like that, which we could have to some extent in Champions, but we don't. And also, you're missing out on all these like viral moments and the content creation opportunities that come with having replays. Like, it's just an added burden to creating YouTube videos or Twitch streams less so, but YouTube videos about Twitter moments about this. And also, you are missing out on viral moments that people just have while they're battling that you want to save. And if you're playing on mobile and you weren't already recording your screen and there's no clip functionality like there is on Nintendo Switch, you can't share those moments, which is huge because people click on those, people like those, and people say, ooh, what's that game? That's crazy. I know Pokemon. That was a crazy turn. I want to try this game out. You're missing out on that without replays. It's just a missed opportunity. And it's just like, why isn't this in the game? And the only reason that I can think of for them not implementing replay functionality is because this is as close to a direct port of competitive battling from Scarlet and Violet to a mobile release, right? Which again, already had somewhat of a spectator mode that they probably just fixed, but no replay functionality. And that's just a huge missed opportunity. There are other features that competitive players need, like really, really need for competitive play to work that they're missing out on. The first of which is they don't have local multiplayer, which I understand is a constraint because it's really hard to connect your Switch to a mobile device locally. But recently, the drama on Twitter was that this is going to make it harder for locals to host tournaments because they need to provide Wi-Fi. And right now, if you play at VGC locals, you know most of them are at a local card store. And it turns out that to function as a business, a local card store does not need to have public Wi-Fi. And there have been multiple TOs that have posted saying this is an impediment to us hosting VGC locals, which a lot of card stores already don't host. And so if we expect a boom in popularity, it really shouldn't come with a contraction of the number of locals that actually can host this game. And I know this is something that they are made aware of. Shout out to Lorcy, our community ambassador, who has escalated this issue. And I hope that this gets resolved. But this is also, like, again, just not really thoughtful design. And then I don't know what the solution to that is. Maybe that's a policy change for local game stores and where they can host events, right? Like, there's other ways to solve that. But again, just not realizing what the reality is on the ground for people who actually already play is concerning, especially when it's one of your major stakeholders, which is not just players, but also card stores that are a huge, huge part of your business as the Pokemon company. And it's a part of the competitive Pokemon ecosystem. And then the other thing that they're missing out on is open team sheets, which is, again, a huge impediment to competitive players and something that will drive us off the platform. If we had open team sheets, because we know there are going to be open team sheet tournaments. If I'm preparing for a tournament, I need to prepare in the same format that I am playing in. I need open team sheets. It's non-negotiable because we very quickly learned when this became a thing that playing in open team sheets and playing in closed team sheets are very fundamentally different games. And so if I am queuing up on ranked ladder on Pokemon Champions, I am not really practicing for a tournament that I have upcoming. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to practice on Pokemon Showdown, where I can save my replays and I can play in an open team sheet best of 3 format. The best of 3 part, I think, is actually less important. It's the open team sheet part that is so important for actual tournament prep. And this is, again, and also at locals, we use handwritten team sheets they don't really cause issues, but like they have the potential to cause issues if you speak different languages or if your handwriting is bad or just the additional like hey, I get to call my locals up and hey, do you have a printer? Like, are you going to print out extra team sheets? Is a real thing that I have to do sometimes to go to locals because I don't own a printer, right? And so it's just like, this is something that could have been added to the game if they really thought about what competitive players needed, and they didn't. And it's missing functionality that means that the top players are not going to be playing champions as much as they would be. Which begs the question, if you are not giving existing Pokemon fans anything new, except for maybe a new flashy user interface and some accessibility, and you're not giving competitive players the tools they need to actually use the game to compete at a high level or to improve at the game and get to a competitive level, and you're not throwing a bone to competitive players who currently don't play VGC and enjoy competitive Pokemon in other ways, and also you are delaying mobile release and weakening the amount of hype that the mobile release is going to have as a result, who is this game for? That's my concern. And that's a really big concern because obviously VGC has grown a ton. I mean, I went to regionals that had under 100 players when I was starting out. So to get 800, 900, 1,000 people just signed up for the first regional and champions at Indianapolis, that's really crazy. And it's only going to grow. I mean, we have a 6,500 player grassroots tournament coming up. It is going to grow. This is going to widen the pool, but the pool could be so much bigger. And the concern is that these people don't stick around because there's nothing new, there's nothing for them, and it's a real concern because this is something that my friend Sableye VGC made a video about months ago, and I kind of wrote him off. I was like, nah, it's not. You're worrying too much. But now I share that concern, which is that how is VGC going to attract new players after the initial hype from Pokemon Champions dies down? We're no longer tied in to the main series games. There is no way for you to go into online mode, ranked battles, and see that. If you're watching Pokemon Scarlet and Violet content on Twitch, you probably see a stream from a bigger content creator that's playing VGC. Now you're not. It's going to be a separate category altogether, right? So if, again, initially we're going to see a boom in popularity. It might not be as big as I want it to be if they had made this game a little more approachable for other types of fans other than people who already know about VGC. But, it is going to increase in popularity in the short term. But in the medium to long term, if Champions is all we're playing on and it's a separate mobile app, like the equivalent of Pokemon Sleep, you're going to have to convince people who don't currently play competitive Pokemon and have never engaged with competitive Pokemon because competitive Pokemon isn't part of the main series games anymore. And you're going to convince them to download the mobile app and play. It's going to be a hard sell. It really is. And so unless you nail this, I'm concerned about how big VGC will be and whether its current growth that we've seen, that this incredibly quick growth is going to continue. I think it flatten out and maybe even start to decrease in popularity in year 3 or 4 of Pokemon Champions because it's missing the audience retention features that it really, really needs, and because people are just going to get sick of playing boring old VGC, which, again, it sounds antagonistic, it sounds sad. I get bored of playing VGC all the time. I play as a series competitor. I play because I want to qualify for Worlds. There are formats I like. There are formats I dislike. But there are definitely times where I am like, I don't really feel like playing VGC right now. And if I could queue up and play random battles, I would play this game nonstop. And if I could actually practice for tournaments on Champions, I would play this game way more. And I think that's true of a lot of other people too. I think about all the things I said. 3v3 random battles solves every single issue. I kid you not. Every single issue, right? Casual players, they don't have to know about team building. They don't have to figure out what the metagame looks like. They just queue up. They play. People who already like competitive Pokemon love random battles. Random battles is the one thing that cuts across every single type of competitive player. They love it. The other concern that I had that I didn't even mention is on mobile release. Is it that you keep showing people playing on a bus, but is there going to be a disconnect, reconnect type thing? Because my connection is not the most stable when I'm out and about. Is the game's going to be shortened so that I can actually play it on my normal bus ride, which is 10 to 15 minutes, which is, I don't know if I necessarily want to queue up a game of VGC if I won't be able to finish it when I'm nearing my stop, right? That's a concern. 3v3 random battles solves that issue as well. You want the best way to get people into competitive Pokemon and hooked on competitive Pokemon, in my opinion, get them to play random battles. Don't have to learn about all these stats. Don't have to learn about a metagame. Just play some games, have some fun, and you'll get into it real quickly, right? So it just feels like a no-brainer to me to add random battles, but here we are. It's just this game is missing so many features that I thought would be essential to a competitive game, and just hasn't really reimagined what it is to play competitive Pokemon, and especially reimagined what it is to play competitive Pokemon on a mobile device, right? And that's the difference to me between TCG Live and Pokemon Pocket, right? TCG Live is a faithful simulator that was meant for people, TCG players, to get practice playing TCG without having to actually play the cards themselves in person. And it kind of flopped. Like, it's not very popular. Pocket, hugely popular because it was expressly designed for mobile players to play on the go as a mobile game. And it really like reimagined and rethought what the TCG should look like on that platform. And they did not do that for VGC in Pokemon Champions. And that scares me. Obviously, Champions comes out next week. I'm very excited for it. It is kind of tailor-made for me as a competitor. I know I mentioned some of the complaints I had as a competitor, but obviously I'm still very excited for it. So excited for a new format, excited for Megas to come back. Like, there's going to be so much Pokemon Champions content on this channel. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. But there are some real concerns. And I don't want my excitement for... I don't want these red flags to diminish anyone's excitement for Pokemon Champions, but I do hope that we can take a look at this through a critical lens, not just through the lens of, I'm a VGC player who plays VGC and is excited for Pokemon Champions, but more broadly, what does this mean for competitive battling as a whole, and how does Champions fit into the broader competitive ecosystem and the broader like mobile game ecosystem? Because it just doesn't feel like those are questions that the Pokemon company really thought of when they were designing this game.